Now remember, before doing the topic of solving inequalities, you must go and do the playlist on solving basic equations, because this inequality here, I'm going to treat it like I've done here as a equation that I want to solve. So I'm going to replace this with the equal sign. Now there's different ways, different approaches. I could get rid of the minus 5 first, or I can get rid of the minus 3x first. I'm going to get rid of the minus 3x first. I'll explain to you why. I like to start off with collecting all my x's on one side first, the side that has the most x's. Now, as you can see, on the left hand side I've got 2x, and on the right hand side I've got minus 3x. It makes sense to collect all the x's on the left hand side. So that means I have to get rid of the minus 3x on the right hand side. So how do you get rid of minus 3x? You add 3x. Now if I add 3x on this side, to make sure it stays balanced, I have to add 3x on this side. So I've just added 3x to both sides. So that means now the minus 3x and the plus 3x cancels out on the right, leaving with just 4 on the right hand side. And on the left hand side, well, the 2x here added 3x here becomes 5x, and the minus 5, I just copy it down. I've done nothing to that. So now I'm left with 5x minus 5 is equal to 4. Now I want to get rid of this minus 5 by adding 5 here. Now if I add 5 on the left hand side, I have to add 5 on the right hand side. So I'm adding 5 to both sides. So 4 add 5 is 9 on the right hand side. On the left hand side, well, the minus 5 and the plus 5 cancels out, just 0, leaving just 5x. So that means 5x is equal to 9. So what is x? X is equal to 9 over 5. Now you can leave it as a fraction like that, or you can turn it into a mixed number. So as a mixed number, it will be, copy the 5 down like that. So how many 5s go into 9? 1, and the remainder is 4. So it's 1 and 4/5. Okay, but we could do something else here. Obviously 9 over 5 is the same as saying, if I double the top and the bottom, I'll get 18 over 10. And we know that 18 divided by 10 is 1.8. So the answer is 1.8. So if I treat it like an equation, then x is equal to 1.8. But don't forget, this wasn't an equation. So the answer here is actually just x is equal to or less than 1.8. The important thing to remember is that we did not multiply or divide by a negative number at all. We did not do that at all. We did not multiply or divide by a negative number, so the sign just stays the same. Okay, so this is basically what we're doing. Okay, so I've just tidied it up for you here. So I just want to show you the other way you could run this, or the proper way to do this without treating it as an equation. So I added 5 to each side to get rid of this minus 5. So when you add 5 to both sides, 4 add 5 is 9, and so you get this minus 3x. So here I just added 5 to both sides. So 4 add 5 is equal to 9, and then minus 5 add 5, this cancels out, leaving just 2x on the left hand side. Then I add 3x, because I want to get rid of this minus 3x. I added 3x to both sides to get 5x and 9, and then divide both sides by 5, so x is less than or equal to 1.8. Let me study up again. Now remember, you will struggle to do this topic unless you've done the solving equations topics first. So I'll just explain it one more time. Because I want to get this minus 5, I added 5 to both sides. So 4 add 5 gave me 9, and the minus 3x was just copied down. And here, minus 5 and plus 5 cancelled out, just leave me 2x, so that came here. So now, I want to get, because I want to get x on its own, and I want to get rid of this minus 3x, I'm going to add 3x here, and I want to add 3x here. So 2x add 3x is 5x, and here the minus 3x and the plus 2x cancels out, leaving just 9. So to get the x on its own now, I have to divide this side by 5, and I have to divide this side by 5. So the times 5 and the divided 5 cancels out, leaving just x. And if you do 9 divided by 5 on your calculator, you'll get 1.8. So x is less than or equal to 1.8. Because we did not at any stage, here can you see, we did not at any stage divide or multiply by a negative number, the sign always stayed like this throughout every step. I did not have to flip the sign. But in the next question, I will show you, I'll do a question deliberately in a longer way to show you how the sign must get flipped. So question C now. So I'm gonna, instead of equals, obviously we've got this sign here. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I wanna get rid of this plus 4. So I'm gonna subtract, I'm gonna get rid of this for now. I'm gonna subtract 4 on this side and I'm gonna subtract 4 on this side. So instead of equal sign, we'll just copy that down. So on the right hand side, I've got 3x, minus 2 and minus 4 gives me minus 6. So the minus 2 there, minus 4 there, gives me minus 6. And on the left hand side, the plus 4 and the minus 4 cancels out, leaving with just x. Now, I'm going to collect all the x on the left hand side. To do that, I have to get rid of the 3x on the right hand side. So I'm going to take away 3x here, and I'm going to take away 3x here. So now on the left hand side I'll have x minus 3x. So it's like saying 1x here, isn't it? So 1x take away 3x is minus 2x. The 3x and the minus 3x cancels out, leaving with just minus 6. Now this is a very important point. You got to pay attention here. So far my inequality sign, I've used it in this direction in all 3 cases, but watch what happens now. To get the x on its own, I have to divide both sides by minus 2 to get this x on its own. So on the left hand side, obviously minus 2 divided by minus 2 cancels out, leaving with just x. And on the right hand side, I've got minus 6 divided by minus 2, which is positive 3. Now I cannot copy this sign in. I have to, because I've just divided by a negative number, I have to change the sign. So the answer is x is greater than 3. The answer is actually x is greater than 3. It's not x is less than. If I continue to copy in this sign, the answer would be x is less than 3, which it isn't. I'll show you here. If we imagine for 1 second that we did make the mistake and we did not flip the sign and we got this wrong answer here. So we think if we made that mistake, we'd have thought x is any number less than 3. So let's take 2. So I'm going to do this again. I'm going to substitute value of 2 in, assuming we made the mistake. So 2 add 4 has to be less than, so remember instead of x I'm using 2, and instead of 3 times x on the right hand side I'm going to say 3 times 2 minus 2. Now using both maths, 3 times 2 is 6, take away 2, and on the left hand side 2 add 4 is 6. So now as you can see on the right hand side 6 take away 2 is 4, and on the left hand I've got 6. There you go, there's a mistake. 6 is not less than 4. 6 is greater than 4. Okay, so this was a mistake. X should be greater than 3. So just tidied it up so that you can see what's going on. So what did we do first? We subtracted 4 from both sides, and we got x is less than 3x minus 6. Let me just write it like this. So minus 2 and minus 4 give me minus 6, and the 3x gets copied down. The plus 1 and minus 4 got cancelled out, leaving just x. Okay, and then We subtracted 3x from both sides to get minus 2x and minus 5, and then we divided both sides by, so this should be a 6 minus 6. So because here we divided both sides by minus 2, the sign had to change. So divide each side by minus 2 and change the sign. So I hope that's a bit more clear. Now I remind you one more time, before this topic you should have done solving equations, because I'm going through the solving part quite fast. If you don't understand the solving parts, you must go back to the solving equations playlist and watch that video again. Now I just want to show you, you could have actually, this is a very important exam tip. So it's an exam tip. You can actually avoid the situation where you will have to divide by negative here or multiply by negative, and then you have to change the sign. Okay, what we could have done was, let's start from the beginning, copy the question down. X plus 4 is less than 3x minus 2. So what we could have done was, we could have said the right hand side has more x's, it has 3x. On the left hand side is only 1x. So I want to gather all my x's on the right hand side. So to do that, I have to get rid of the x on the left hand side. So minus x here, minus x here. So now on the left hand side, the x and the minus x cancels out, leaving just plus 4, which is just 4. On the right hand side, I've got 3x, take away x, which is 2x, and the minus 2 just copies down because we haven't done anything yet. Now, because I want just x on the right hand side, I'm going to get rid of the minus 2. So to get rid of the minus 2, I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So that means on the left hand side, I've got 4 add 2 is 6, has to be less than 2x, because the minus 2 and the plus 2 just cancels out. Now, can you see I've got no negative numbers? I've just taken a slightly different approach and I don't have any negative numbers. So I'm just dividing by a positive number. I have to divide both sides by 2 to get the x on its own. So that means that times 2 and the divided cancel out, leaving just x, and 6 divided by 2 is just 3. There you go. We did not have to change the sign over because we did not have to multiply or divide by a negative number. So sometimes when you start a question off, think, do I want to take this approach and then have to change the signs here, or do I want to take this approach where there's no need to change signs? Now the answer is fine, is correct, but it's just nicer to write it like this. So we know that x has to be greater than 3, so it's nice just to write it like this. X has to be greater than 3. So can you see? X is greater than 3. So I've just copied it down nicely with x at the beginning and the 3 at the end. And look, the answer here is exactly the same as the answer here. So you have to make a sensible choice. Do you want to take the left approach or the right approach? If you take the left approach and you're multiplying or dividing by a negative number, please don't forget to change the sign.